The rain in New York City in November of 1966 didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It turned the streets into black mirrors that reflected the neon signs of bars and pawn shops, distorting them into long, bleeding streaks of red and yellow. It was a cold rain, the kind that seeped into your bones and made you pull your collar up tight, hiding your face from the wind and from the prying eyes of a city that never really slept. For most men, a rainy Tuesday night in Hell's Kitchen was a reason to stay indoors, to sit by a radiator with a glass of cheap scotch and wait for the dawn. But Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson wasn't most men. He was the king of Harlem, the man who had turned the numbers game into an empire, the man who had walked out of Alcatraz with his head high and his spirit unbroken. He moved through the city not like a visitor, but like a landlord inspecting a property that had fallen into disrepair. The black Lincoln Continental moved slowly down 44th Street, its tires hissing against the wet asphalt. The wipers slapped back and forth in a hypnotic rhythm, clearing the view only for it to be obscured again a second later by the relentless downpour. Inside the car, the air was warm and smelled of rich tobacco and leather. Bumpy sat in the back seat, his eyes fixed on the passing buildings, his face an unreadable mask of calm. He wore a charcoal gray suit, tailored to perfection, the kind of suit that whispered power rather than shouting it. His fedora rested on the seat beside him. In the front seat, Junie Bird gripped the steering wheel with hands that looked like they could crush granite. Junie was Bumpy's right hand, his shadow, and his most loyal soldier. He was a man of few words, but tonight, the silence in the car was heavy with unspoken tension. They were far from home. They were miles south of 110th Street, deep in territory that belonged to the Irish gangs and the spillover of the Italian families. This wasn't Harlem. Here, a black face in a luxury car wasn't a sign of respect. It was a target. "You sure about this, Bumpy?" Junie asked, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror, checking for a tail that wasn't there. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. "We're a long way from the terrace, and this neighborhood, it don't exactly roll out the red carpet for us. The Westies are hungry, and the Italians down here, they don't play by the same rules as the Genovese family uptown." Bumpy lit a cigarette, the flare of the match illuminating the sharp angles of his face for a brief second. He took a long drag, exhaling a plume of blue smoke that drifted toward the ceiling. He didn't look worried. He looked like a man who was exactly where he intended to be. "Relax, Junie," Bumpy said, his voice smooth and cool, like velvet wrapped around a brick. "We aren't here for a war. We're here for a haircut." Junie frowned, his brow furrowing. "A haircut? Bumpy, with all due respect, we got barbers in Harlem. We got Nelson. We got Smitty. You don't need to cross enemy lines to get a trim. You're risking a lot for a hot towel." Bumpy chuckled softly, a dry sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's not about the haircut, Junie. It's about the barber. Sometimes, to solve a problem, you have to go to the source. And sometimes, the source is hiding in plain sight, sweeping hair off a floor in Hell's Kitchen." Junie didn't ask any more questions. He knew better. Bumpy played a game that was 3 moves ahead of everyone else. If Bumpy said they were getting a haircut, they were getting a haircut. But Junie's hand drifted from the steering wheel to rest near the heavy .38 caliber pistol tucked into his waistband. He kept the engine running a little hot, ready to peel out at the first sign of trouble. Bumpy pointed a gloved finger toward a small, nondescript shopfront sandwich between a bakery and a shuttered appliance store. A striped barber pole spun lazily in the window, the red, white, and blue, spiraling endlessly into nowhere. The sign above the door was faded, the gold lettering chipping away to reveal the wood beneath. "Sal's Gentlemen's Grooming." "Pull over here," Bumpy said. Junie guided the massive car to the curb, idling the engine. "You want me to come in?" "No," Bumpy said, reaching for his hat and placing it carefully on his head, adjusting the brim until it cast a shadow over his eyes. "You stay here. Keep the engine running, but don't look nervous. If anyone asks, you're waiting for your boss to finish a meeting. If trouble starts inside, you'll know. But I don't expect trouble. Not yet." "I don't like it, Bumpy," Junie muttered. "It feels like a trap." "Life is a trap, Junie," Bumpy said, opening the door. The trick is knowing how to grab the cheese without springing the bar. Bumpy stepped out into the rain. The cold hit him instantly, but he didn't flinch. He buttoned his cashmere overcoat and walked across the sidewalk with a deliberate, measured stride. He didn't run from the rain. A king does not run. He pushed open the door of the barbershop, a small brass bell chiming to announce his arrival. The shop was warm and smelled intensely of bay rum, talcum powder, and old wood. It was a smell that Bumpy associated with safety, with the community of the barbershops in Harlem where men gathered to talk politics and sports. But this place felt different. It was quieter. The air was thicker. The shop was empty of customers. The 3 barber chairs, upholstered in cracked red leather, stood empty. The mirrors lining the wall were foggy from the humidity. In the back corner, sweeping a pile of dark hair into a dustpan, was a woman. She wasn't what you expected to see in a Hell's Kitchen barbershop in 1966. She was striking. She had hair the color of midnight, pulled back into a severe bun that accentuated the sharpness of her cheekbones and the fullness of her lips. She wore a white barber's smock, but beneath it, Bumpy could see the lines of a black dress that fit her like a second skin. She was tall, statuesque, and she moved with a grace that was almost predatory. She stopped sweeping as the door closed behind Bumpy. She turned slowly, the broom held loosely in one hand. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and completely devoid of fear. Most people, when Bumpy Johnson walked into a room, felt a shiver of intimidation. They saw the scar, they saw the size of him, and they saw the reputation that walked in the door before he did. But this woman didn't flinch. She looked him up and down, analyzing him, dissecting him. It was the look of a butcher assessing a cut of meat. "We're closed," she said. Her voice was husky, with a faint trace of a Bronx accent that had been polished down into something smoother, something more dangerous. "Sign on the door says 6. It's 6:15. Bumpy didn't turn around. He took off his hat and shook the rain from it, placing it on the rack by the door. He unbuttoned his coat, revealing the pristine suit beneath. "The sign also says, 'Walk-ins welcome,'" Bumpy said, his voice echoing slightly in the tiled room. "And I see an empty chair. I've had a long day, miss. I could use a shave." The woman leaned the broom against the wall. She wiped her hands on a towel, her eyes never leaving Bumpy's face. A small, almost imperceptible smile played at the corners of her mouth. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a cat that had just seen a mouse wander into the kitchen. "You're not from the neighborhood," she observed, walking toward the center chair. She spun it around with a practiced kick of her foot, the heavy metal base grinding against the floor tiles. "I know the faces around here. I know the dock workers, the cops, the wise guys. I don't know you." "I'm a tourist," Bumpy lied smoothly, walking toward the chair. "Just passing through, admiring the architecture." "Hell's Kitchen doesn't have architecture," she said, picking up a fresh cape and snapping it in the air. The sound was like a whip crack. "It has tenements and rats. So, you're either lost or you're looking for something specific." Bumpy sat down. The leather was cool against his back. He relaxed his shoulders, settling into the chair. "I'm looking for a shave," he said. "Are you the barber?" "I'm the one holding the scissors," she said. She draped the cape over him, fastening it tight around his neck. Her hands were cool and strong. Bumpy noticed her fingers. They weren't soft. They were calloused, the hands of someone who worked, but there was a dexterity to them, a precision in the way she tucked the cloth against his collar. She didn't fumble. "Comfortable?" she asked, standing behind him. He could see her reflection in the mirror. She was looking at his neck, not his eyes. "Solid," Bumpy said. She walked to the counter and turned on the hot lather machine. It whirred to life, spitting out warm white foam. "The name is Lucia," she said. "Lucia Carmine." "Nice to meet you, Lucia," Bumpy said. "I'm Ellsworth." "Ellsworth?" she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "That's an old-fashioned name. Sounds like a banker or a judge." "I'm a businessman," Bumpy said. "And what business are you in, Ellsworth?" she asked, applying the hot lather to his face. Her touch was firm. She massaged the soap into his skin, working it into the stubble on his chin and cheeks. The heat was relaxing, but Bumpy didn't let his guard down. He watched her in the mirror. He watched her eyes. Import, export, Bumpy said vaguely. Problem solving, community outreach. Lucia laughed. It was a throaty, genuine laugh. Problem solving. That's a nice way to put it. Around here we call that cleaning up messes, or making them. She wiped her hands and picked up a hot towel from the steamer. She wrapped it around Bumpy's face, covering his eyes and nose, leaving only his mouth exposed. The world went dark. The heat was intense, opening his pores, softening the beard. For a moment, Bumpy was blind. He was completely vulnerable. He was sitting in a chair in hostile territory, blinded by a hot towel, with a woman he didn't know, standing over him with access to sharp instruments. Most men would have panicked. Bumpy breathed deeply, inhaling the steam. He listened. He heard the rain against the glass. He heard the faint hum of the refrigerator in the back, and he heard the distinct metallic sound of a straight razor being stropped against leather. Shh, shh, shh. The rhythm was steady, practiced. "You have a lot of trust, Ellsworth." Lucia's voice came from the darkness. She was close now. He could smell her perfume. It was something floral, jasmine maybe, but with an undertone of something sharper, like gunpowder or steel. Coming into a strange shop, letting a stranger cover your eyes, you must be very confident, or very foolish. "My wife tells me it's a bit of both," Bumpy said, his voice muffled by the towel. "But I have a good instinct about people. I don't think you're the type to give a bad haircut. It would be bad for business." "Business," Lucia mused. "That's all men think about. Money, territory, respect. But a shave is personal. It's intimate. You're letting someone put a blade against your jugular vein. One slip, one sneeze, one moment of anger, and it's all over." She pulled the towel off his face. The sudden exposure to the cool air was shocking. Bumpy blinked, his eyes adjusting to the light. Lucia was standing right next to him, the straight razor in her hand. The blade was open, glinting silver under the fluorescent lights. It was a beautiful tool, the handle made of pearl, the steel honed to a microscopic edge. She tilted his head back, her fingers resting on his forehead. She exposed his throat. "Keep very still," she whispered. She brought the razor to his cheek. The metal was cold against his hot skin. She began to scrape. The sound of the hair being severed was loud in the quiet room. Scritch, scritch. She was good, better than good. She had the touch of a surgeon. She moved the blade with fluid, confident strokes, clearing the foam and the stubble, leaving the skin beneath smooth and clean. She worked down his cheek, along the jawline, careful around the chin. Bumpy watched her. She was focused, her eyes narrowed in concentration. But there was something else in her expression. A kind of excitement, a thrill. "You have tough skin, Ellsworth," she said, wiping the blade on a towel. "Thick, hard to cut, like leather." "Life thickens the hide," Bumpy said. "I suppose it does," she said. She moved to the other side of his face. She leaned in close, her hip brushing against his arm. It was a deliberate move, flirtatious, provocative. "You know, usually, the men who come in here talk my ear off. They talk about the Yankees. They talk about their wives. They talk about the weather. But you're quiet. You're watching me." I appreciate a craftsman at work," Bumpy said. "Craftswoman," she corrected, bringing the razor to his neck. This was the dangerous part. The throat, the carotid artery, the windpipe. "And what do you see when you watch me, Ellsworth? Do you see a barber?" "I see someone who knows how to handle a blade," Bumpy said evenly. "I've been handling blades since I was a little girl," Lucia said softly. She was shaving the sensitive skin of his neck now, the razor moving upward against the grain. "My father taught me. He said a gun is loud, a gun is clumsy, but a knife is an extension of the hand. It's silent, it's precise." She paused. The razor was resting directly over his pulse point. Bumpy could feel his own heart beating against the cold steel. Thump, thump, thump. "He also told me," Lucia continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "that you can tell a lot about a man by how he reacts to a razor. A coward sweats, a liar flinches. But a dangerous man goes still." She leaned in closer, her face inches from his. Her eyes were dark pools of mischief and menace. "And you, Ellsworth, you are very, very still." She pressed the blade slightly, not enough to cut deep, but enough to create a divot in the skin. A warning. "Tell me," she purred. "Why shouldn't I just push a little harder? It would be so easy. A little flick of the wrist, and all that expensive gray wool would be ruined red." The air in the shop seemed to vanish. The silence was absolute. The threat was no longer implied. It was physical. It was pressing against his throat. This was the moment where the predator revealed itself. This wasn't a barber. This was Lucia Carmine, the woman whispered about in the back rooms of social clubs. The woman the Italians called La Vedova Nera, the Black Widow. She wasn't mobbed up officially, but she did work for them. Messy work, quiet work, and right now, she had the king of Harlem at her mercy. Bumpy didn't blink. He didn't gasp. He didn't grab her wrist. He simply looked up at her, his eyes locking with hers. He looked bored. He looked like a man waiting for a bus. "At least finish the shave before you kill me, Lucia," Bumpy said calmly. "I'd hate to be an open casket with only half a face done. It would be disrespectful to the Undertaker." Lucia froze. The playful menace in her eyes flickered, replaced by genuine confusion. She pulled the razor back an inch, just enough to let him breathe, but still close enough to strike. "You know my name," she said. It wasn't a question. "I told you my name was Lucia, but you said it like you knew it before you walked in." "Lucia Carmine," Bumpy said, the name rolling off his tongue. "Born in Brooklyn. Father was a butcher, not a barber. He went away for manslaughter in '48. You learned the trade, but you found out that shaving men didn't pay as well as removing them." Lucia took a step back. The flirtation was gone. She held the razor like a weapon now, not a tool. Her body tensed, ready to spring. "Who are you?" she hissed. "You're not a tourist. You're not a businessman." "I told you," Bumpy said, sitting up slightly, though the cape still pinned his arms. "I'm a problem solver, and right now, I'm trying to solve a problem before it starts." "You're a cop," she accused, her eyes narrowing. Bumpy laughed. This time, it was a genuine hearty laugh that shook his chest. "A cop? Lucia, look at me. Do I look like the law to you? The law doesn't wear Italian silk. The law doesn't come into Hell's Kitchen alone at night." "Then who?" she demanded, the razor twitching in her hand. "My name is Ellsworth," Bumpy said, "but my friends call me Bumpy." The name hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes went wide. She took another step back, nearly knocking over the tray of combs. "Bumpy," she whispered. "Bumpy Johnson." "The one and only," Bumpy said. "And I have to say, the rumors about you are true. You are fast, you are precise, and you are very, very distracting." Lucia stared at him. Her mind was racing. She knew who he was. Everyone knew who Bumpy Johnson was. He was the bogeyman of the underworld, the man who had gone to war with Dutch Schultz, the man who held Harlem in an iron grip. And he was sitting in her chair, wearing a barber's cape, completely unconcerned that she was holding a lethal weapon. "You're the Harlem Godfather," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "What is the king of Harlem doing in my shop? You have a death wish? There are men on this block who would kill you for the change in your pocket, let alone the bounty on your head." "I'm not worried about the men on the block," Bumpy said dismissively. "I have Junie Bird outside in the Lincoln. If anyone touches me, this entire block becomes a parking lot by morning." Lucia glanced at the window, seeing the dark silhouette of the car through the rain-streaked glass. She looked back at Bumpy. "So you came for me." "I heard you were the best," Bumpy said. "And I heard you were independent, that you take contracts from the families, but you don't belong to them, that you're a free agent." "I work for myself," Lucia said proudly, lifting her chin. "I don't answer to any man. Not a husband, not a boss, and certainly not a gangster from uptown." "Good," Bumpy said. "I like independent women. My wife, Mamie, she's independent, strong. She'd like you. Well, maybe not the razor part, but she'd respect the hustle." "Don't talk about your wife," Lucia snapped, stepping forward again. The aggression was back, but it was different now. It was defensive. You come in here, you trick me, you sit in my chair. What do you want, Johnson? You want to hire me? Is that it? You have a rival you want taken care of? Some loudmouth who needs a close shave? No, Bumpy said. I didn't come here to hire you to kill anyone. I came here to hire you to not kill someone. Lucia frowned. I don't understand. I know there's a contract, Lucia, Bumpy said softly. I have ears everywhere, even in Little Italy. I know that a certain capo in the Genovese family, let's call him Fat Tony just for the sake of conversation, put a marker out. A quiet marker. He didn't want his own guys to do it because it would start a war. He wanted an outsider, a ghost. He wanted you. Lucia went still. Her face became a mask again. She didn't confirm it, but she didn't deny it. The silence was her confession. So, Bumpy continued, watching her carefully, you took the contract, $50,000. Half now, half when the job is done. The target is me. Lucia smiled then. It was a cold, sharp smile. The price was actually $60,000, she said. Inflation, you know. The cost of razor blades has gone up. 60, Bumpy nodded. Tony always was generous with other people's money. So, here we are, Lucia. You have the razor. You have the target. I'm sitting right here. Why did you stop? Why didn't you slice me? When you had the towel over my eyes, you could have claimed the money tonight. I wanted to see your eyes, Lucia said honestly. I wanted to see the man they talk about. The legend. I wanted to see if you had fear in you. It's a kink of mine. I like to watch the light go out when they know it's coming. And, Bumpy asked. And you're disappointing, she sighed, twirling the razor. You're too calm. It's boring. Killing you would be like cutting a statue. There's no sport in it. I apologize for being a boring victim, Bumpy said dryly. But I have a counteroffer. I don't break contracts, Bumpy, Lucia said, leaning against the counter, the razor still in hand. It's bad for my reputation. If word gets out that Lucia Carmine took money and didn't deliver, I'm finished. The Italians will come for me. The Italians are going to come for you anyway, Bumpy said. Think about it, Lucia. You're smart. You really think Tony is going to let you live after you kill me? I'm a big fish. The fallout from my death will be massive. The police, the feds, my people, everyone will be looking for the killer. Tony doesn't want that heat. He needs a patsy. He needs a loose end tied up. You're the loose end. Lucia's eyes narrowed. She knew he was right. It was the way the game was played. The assassin was always the first witness to be silenced. You kill me, Bumpy said, and you sign your own death warrant. Tony will wait until you come for the second half of the money, and he'll put a bullet in your head. Case closed. Bumpy is dead. The killer is dead, and Tony keeps his hands clean. Lucia looked at the razor. She looked at Bumpy. She was calculating the odds. She was a survivor, first and foremost. So what's the offer? She asked. Finish the shave, Bumpy said. Do a good job. I still have a little stubble on the left side. Then, you forget the contract. You keep the $30,000 Tony gave you up front, and I match the full $60,000, cash, tonight. You have $60,000 on you? Lucia asked, skeptical. I don't carry that kind of cash to a barbershop, Bumpy said. But Junie does. It's in the trunk. Call it a rainy day fund. $90,000, Lucia mused. That's a lot of money. Enough to disappear. Enough to go to Paris. I always wanted to go to Paris. You love Paris, Bumpy said. The bread is excellent. But, Lucia said, stepping back toward him, if I take your money and I don't kill you, Tony finds out he comes for me. Let him come, Bumpy said. Or, we can turn the tables. You work for me now. I told you, she snapped. I don't work for anyone. Not as a soldier, Bumpy clarified. As an insurance policy. You keep your ears open. You let me know when the Italians are moving. And in exchange, you get the protection of Harlem. No one touches you. Not Tony. Not the cops. You become untouchable. Lucia stood over him. She looked down at his exposed throat. The razor hovered inches from his skin. The tension was electric. She was attracted to the danger of him, to the sheer audacity of walking into her shop and buying his own life back. It was the ultimate power move. She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear. "You're very charming, Bumpy Johnson," she whispered. "You have a lot of, what do the kids call it? Riz?" "I call it survival," Bumpy said, "and charm is just good manners with a motive." "And your wife?" Lucia asked, tracing the line of his jaw with her free hand. "Does she know you're out here negotiating with a woman holding a razor?" "Mamie knows I do what I have to do to come home to her," Bumpy said, his voice hardening slightly. "Don't mistake this for a romance, Lucia. This is business. I love my wife. I respect my marriage. You are a talented woman and a dangerous one. I admire that. But I'm not here to flirt. I'm here to survive." Lucia pulled back, a smirk on her lips. She respected the boundary. A man who couldn't be seduced was a man who could be trusted to keep his word. "You're a rare breed, Ellsworth," she said. She stepped back and snapped the razor shut. The sound was final. "All right," she said. 60,000 plus the tip." "Deal," Bumpy said. "And one more thing," Lucia said, picking up the hot towel again. "If I'm going to work for you, if I'm going to betray my own people, I need to know one thing." "What's that?" "Can you handle the heat?" she asked, dropping the hot towel over his face again. "Lucia," Bumpy's voice came from beneath the steam. "I am the heat." The bell above the door chimed. Bumpy didn't flinch, but Lucia spun around, the razor flicking open again in a split second. Standing in the doorway was a man. He was soaked to the bone, wearing a cheap trench coat. He wasn't Junie. He was Italian. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around the shop. "Shop's closed," Lucia barked. "Get out." The man didn't leave. He reached into his coat. "Tony sent me," he stammered. He wanted to check on the progress. He said you were taking too long." Bumpy sat up in the chair, pulling the towel off his face. He looked at the man in the doorway. He looked at Lucia. The man saw Bumpy. His eyes went wide. He recognized the face. He realized instantly that he had walked into a situation that was way above his pay grade. He fumbled for the gun in his coat. "Lucia," Bumpy said calmly. "It seems Tony is impatient." Lucia looked at the man, then at Bumpy. This was the test. If she hesitated, she was dead. If she acted, she was with Bumpy. She didn't hesitate. "I hate micromanagers," Lucia growled. She moved. She didn't run. She flowed across the room like liquid shadow. The man never even got the gun out of his holster. The events of the next 10 seconds would decide the fate of the night and whether Bumpy Johnson would walk out of Hell's Kitchen or be carried out. The razor in Lucia's hand caught the light of the neon sign, flashing red like a warning signal. The man in the doorway raised his hand, shouting something in Italian, but Lucia was already inside his guard. Bumpy watched from the chair, the cape still around his neck, as the alliance was sealed in blood. He didn't look away. He lit another cigarette, the flame steady in his hand. "Like I said," Bumpy whispered to himself as the chaos erupted at the door. "Good help is hard to find." But the night was far from over. Tony's man wasn't alone. Through the window, headlights swept across the shop, blindingly bright. Tires screeched, doors slammed. Lucia looked back at Bumpy, her eyes wild with adrenaline. "Looks like your 60,000 just bought you a war, Bumpy." Bumpy stood up, ripping the cape off his neck. He adjusted his tie. He picked up his hat. "No, Lucia," Bumpy said, walking toward her, his eyes cold and hard as the diamonds on his fingers. "It just bought us the first dance. Junie." Outside, the Lincoln's engine roared to life, a dragon waking up. The haircut was over. The lesson was just beginning. The plate glass window of Sal's Gentleman's Grooming didn't just break, it evaporated. The roar of a shotgun blast from the street turned the front of the shop into a glittering shower of shards that rained down onto the checkerboard floor like diamonds falling from a broken sky. Bumpy didn't flinch. He didn't dive. He simply took a half step to the right, placing the heavy porcelain barber's chair between himself and the door. It was a movement of pure economy, the muscle memory of a man who had survived 1,000 nights just like this one. Lucia was faster. At the sound of the glass shattering, she dropped to a crouch, her body coiling like a spring. The straight razor was still in her hand, but now her other hand had found a small, pearl-handled .22 pistol that she had pulled from a thigh holster hidden beneath her dress. She didn't look scared. She looked electric. Her eyes were wide, the pupils dilated, drinking in the chaos as if it were fine wine. 3 of them, she hissed, her voice cutting through the ringing in their ears. 2 by the bakery, 1 by the appliance store. They're trying to flank. They're amateurs, Bumpy said calmly, dusting a shard of glass off the shoulder of his cashmere coat. Professional hitmen don't announce themselves with a shotgun. They wait until you walk out the door. Another blast tore through the shop, shredding the leather of the empty chair next to Bumpy. Stuffing exploded into the air, drifting down like snow mixed with the rain blowing in from the street. Amateurs or not, Lucia said, firing 2 quick shots through the broken window. They have a lot of ammo. And we have a Lincoln, Bumpy replied. On the street, the massive black Continental roared. It didn't speed away. It surged forward, mounting the curb with a sickening crunch of metal on concrete. Junie Bird wasn't driving a getaway car. He was driving a tank. The headlights swept across the storefronts, blindingly bright, catching the silhouettes of the gunmen in their high beams. Junie didn't honk. He just accelerated. The Lincoln clipped the man standing by the appliance store, sending him tumbling into a stack of wet garbage bags. The other 2 gunmen scrambled back, their courage failing as 3 tons of Detroit steel bore down on them. The passenger door swung open. "Time to go, Miss Carmine," Bumpy said, extending a hand to her. "My carriage awaits." Lucia looked at him, then at the open door of the moving car. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound of pure adrenaline. She grabbed her coat from the rack, not forgetting to wipe her razor on it before sliding it into her pocket. "You're crazy," she said, grinning. "I'm punctual," Bumpy corrected. They moved together. Bumpy covered her exit, his body a shield, while Lucia provided the suppressing fire. They stepped out into the freezing rain, the wind whipping around them. The street was a chaotic scene of shouting men and screeching tires, but Bumpy walked to the car with the casual stride of a man walking to his mailbox. He slid into the back seat. Lucia dove in beside him. The door slammed shut, sealing out the noise of the storm and the gunfire. "Go," Bumpy said. Junie Bird didn't need to be told twice. He threw the Lincoln into reverse, spinning the wheel with one hand while holding his .38 in the other. The car fishtailed on the wet pavement, the rear bumper smashing into a fire hydrant, sending a geyser of water shooting into the air. Then, the tires caught traction. The engine screamed, and they rocketed down 44th Street, leaving the wreckage of the Barbershop and the confused, battered hitmen in the rearview mirror. Inside the car, the silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence now. It was the heavy, breathing silence of survival. Bumpy reached into his pocket and pulled out his silver cigarette case. He offered one to Lucia. She took it, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear but from the come down of the violence. Bumpy lit hers, then his own. The flame was steady. "You drive like a maniac," Lucia said to the back of Junie's head. Junie's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. They were cold, hard, and unimpressed. "I drive like I want to keep my boss alive," Junie rumbled. "Which is more than I can say for you, lady. I saw you holding that blade to his throat." "It was a close shave," Lucia teased, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Besides, if I wanted him dead, he'd be dead. You were outside. I was inside. You wouldn't have made it through the door in time." "I would have made it in time to put you in the ground," Junie said. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. "Enough," Bumpy said softly. His voice was low, but it filled the car, instantly cutting the tension between the front seat and the back. Lucia did her job. She made a choice. And because of that choice, we are breathing air instead of dirt. Bumpy turned to look at Lucia. In the passing streetlights, her face was a mixture of beauty and brutality. She had a smear of shaving foam on her collar and a smear of blood on her hand, not hers. She looked like a fallen angel who had decided she liked the fall. "You handled yourself well back there," Bumpy said. "For a barber." "I told you, Lucia said, checking the action on her small pistol. I have many talents, but we have a problem, Ellsworth. We left 3 of Tony's guys alive. They're going to call him. He's going to know the hit failed. He's going to know I flipped. He knows, Bumpy agreed, which means we have a very small window of opportunity before he goes to the mattresses. Tony is emotional. He's impulsive. Right now he's angry, and anger makes men stupid. So what's the play? Lucia asked. We go to Harlem, hunker down, let your army handle it? Bumpy shook his head. If I run back to Harlem, I look weak. It looks like I'm retreating. And if I bring a war to Harlem, innocent people get hurt. My wife is in Harlem. My daughter is in Harlem. I don't bring my work home. Then where? We go to Tony, Bumpy said. Junie's head snapped up. Bumpy, you can't be serious. You want to walk into Little Italy tonight? After this, it's a suicide mission. It's only suicide if they're expecting a fight, Bumpy said, watching the rain streak the window. Tony thinks I'm running. He thinks I'm fleeing north to safety. He's going to send his men to the border of 110th Street to cut us off. He won't be expecting us to come to his front door to return his property. Return his property? Lucia asked, confused. You, Bumpy said. You're the property. You're the contract he paid for. Bumpy leaned back, the leather creaking. Junie, take us to the warehouse on the West Side Highway, the one with the payphone. We need to make a call. The car ride was tense. Lucia sat close to Bumpy, her leg brushing against his. It wasn't seductive anymore. It was conspiratorial. She was trying to figure him out. She had met gangsters before. She had met killers. But Bumpy was different. He didn't have the smell of desperation that most criminals had. He had the gravity of a planet. Why didn't you let me kill the one in the doorway? Lucia asked quietly. I could have dropped him before he even spoke. Because a dead man can't carry a message, Bumpy said. And I need Tony to hear a message loud and clear. And what's the message? That he can't afford me, Bumpy said. They arrived at the warehouse district. The rain was heavier here, coming off the Hudson River in sheets. Junie pulled the car into the shadows of a loading dock. Stay with the car, Bumpy told Junie. Keep the engine running. I'm coming with you, Junie protested. No, Bumpy said. I need you ready to move. If this goes wrong, Lucia and I will need to leave in a hurry. You're the escape hatch, Junie. Don't let it rust. Bumpy and Lucia got out. They walked to a lonely phone booth standing under a flickering street lamp. Bumpy handed Lucia a dime. Call Tony, Bumpy ordered. Lucia looked at the coin, then at Bumpy. And say what? Tell him you have me, Bumpy said. Tell him I'm wounded. Tell him I'm bleeding out in the back of a stolen car. Tell him you want the rest of your money, and you want to deliver the body personally. Lucia's eyes lit up. She understood the game immediately. A Trojan horse, she whispered. Make him believe you, Bumpy said. Use that charm. Lucia stepped into the booth. She dialed the number. Bumpy watched her through the glass. Her posture changed. She slumped slightly. She touched her hair. She became the character, the desperate, greedy assassin. Tony, she said into the receiver, her voice pitching up, breathless. It's Lucia. No, listen to me. It went sideways. You guys are idiots. Yeah, well, they're gone. But I got him. I got Johnson. He's hurt bad, Tony. Gut shot. He's fading. No, I'm not bringing him to the club. I'm not dragging a dying man through the front door. Meet me at the shipyard, Pier 42. And bring the money, Tony, all of it. Or I leave him here for the rats. She listened for a moment, then hung up. She stepped out of the booth, a wicked smile plastered on her face. He bought it, she said. He's greedy. He wants to see you die. He wants to be the one to look in your eyes when the lights go out. He's coming to Pier 42 in 20 minutes. Just him and 2 guards. Good, Bumpy said. Let's go wait for him. The shipyard was a graveyard of steel and shadows. Shipping containers were stacked like monoliths, creating a maze of alleyways. The rain hammered against the metal, creating a deafening industrial symphony. Bumpy and Lucia positioned themselves in the shadows of a crane. Junie had parked the Lincoln 100 yards away, hidden behind a stack of crates, lights off. So, Lucia whispered, leaning against the cold metal of a container. When he shows up, I take the guards, you take Tony? No, Bumpy said. Nobody dies, tonight, unless they have to. Lucia frowned, her face twisting in annoyance. You're soft, Ellsworth. These men tried to kill you. They insulted you. In my world, that demands blood. In your world, life is cheap, Bumpy said, looking out at the dark water of the harbor. In my world, business is expensive. If I kill Tony, the commission sends someone else. Someone I don't know. Someone smarter. Tony is the devil I know. I can manipulate him. I can use him. Dead? He's just a martyr. Alive? He's an ATM machine. You're boring, Lucia sighed, spinning her pistol on her finger. I was hoping for fireworks. You're an adrenaline junkie, Lucia, Bumpy said, turning to face her. His eyes were hard. That makes you dangerous. It makes you sloppy. You like to kill more than to check. That's why you'll never be a boss. You're a tool. A sharp one, but just a tool. Lucia stiffened. Her hand tightened on the gun. Careful, Bumpy. I'm the only thing standing between you and Tony right now. No, Bumpy said, stepping closer to her, invading her space. You're standing next to the king of Harlem. Don't forget who holds the leash. For a second, it looked like she might shoot him. The air crackled with violence. Lucia hated being controlled. She hated being analyzed. But she also respected power, and Bumpy was radiating it. Headlights cut through the darkness. A heavy Cadillac rolled onto the pier, its wipers slashing back and forth. It stopped in the open space between the containers. Showtime, Bumpy said. Remember the deal. You work for me now. Lucia holstered her gun. She took a deep breath, composing her face. She stepped out into the light. The doors of the Cadillac opened. Tony stepped out. He was a large man, wrapped in a camel hair coat that was struggling to contain his bulk. He held a cigar in his mouth and a revolver in his hand. 2 bodyguards flanked him, looking nervous. Where is he? Tony shouted over the rain. Where's the body? Lucia walked toward him, her hands raised, palms open. In the shadows, Tony. He's weak. He can't walk. Bring him out, Tony yelled. I want to see him bleed. First, Lucia said, stopping 10 feet away. The money. Tony laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. You got some nerve, sweetheart. You think you dictate terms to me? He snapped his fingers. One of the guards threw a leather satchel onto the wet ground. It landed with a heavy splat. Count it later, Tony growled. Now give me Johnson. He's right here, a voice said from the darkness. Bumpy stepped out. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't limping. He was buttoning his coat, looking as fresh as if he had just stepped out of a church service. He walked to stand beside Lucia, his hands clasped behind his back. Tony froze. The cigar fell from his mouth. He raised his gun, but he didn't fire. He was too confused. She said you were gut shot. She lied, Bumpy said. Women. You know how they are. Lucia, Tony screamed, his face turning purple. What is this? You crossed me? For him? A moulignon? Lucia didn't flinch at the slur. She just smiled. He pays better, Tony, and he has better manners. Killed him! Tony shrieked at his guards. Kill them both! The guards raised their weapons. But before they could squeeze the triggers, a deafening mechanical whine filled the air. Click, clack. From the top of the shipping container directly above Tony's head, a floodlight snapped on, blinding them. Standing on the edge of the container, looking down like a gargoyle, was Junie Bird. He held a Thompson submachine gun, the barrel pointed directly at Tony's bald spot. Drop it! Junie's voice boomed down from the heavens. Or I turn you into pasta sauce. The guards looked up, squinting into the light. They looked at the machine gun. They looked at Tony. They dropped their guns. Tony stood alone, the rain plastering his hair to his skull. He looked small now. The bluster was gone. He was just a fat man in a wet coat standing in front of a wolf. Bumpy walked forward. He stopped right in front of Tony. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't strike him. He just looked at him with eyes that were colder than the Atlantic Ocean. You made a mistake, Tony, Bumpy said. You reached into Harlem. You tried to pluck a flower from my garden. That was rude. It's business, Bumpy. Tony stammered, sweat mixing with the rain on his face. Just business. The waterfront, we need the access. So you hire a woman to cut my throat in a barbershop? Bumpy asked. That's not business. That's cowardly. Bumpy reached down and picked up the satchel of money. He weighed it in his hand. This is the $60,000 you promised Lucia, Bumpy said. I'm keeping this. Consider it a fine for the disturbance of my evening. And for the haircut. You can't take that, Tony protested weakly. That's family money. It's my money now, Bumpy said. And here is the new deal. You stay out of Harlem. You stay off my blocks. And you never, ever say my wife's name. If you do, I won't send Lucia. I won't send Junie. I'll come myself. And I won't use a razor. I'll use my bare hands. Bumpy leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Tony could hear. And Tony, if you ever try to hire someone to kill me again, make sure they don't like money as much as Lucia does. Bumpy straightened up. He turned to Lucia. Get the money. Lucia grabbed the satchel from Bumpy. She looked at Tony. Her eyes were hungry. The razor was in her hand again. She wanted to do it. Bumpy could see the itch in her fingers. She wanted to slice him just to see the color of his blood. Lucia, Bumpy said sharply. Heal. It was a command for a dog. It was insulting. It was risky. But it worked. Lucia glared at Bumpy, her nostrils flaring. She looked at Tony, then back at Bumpy. She snapped the razor shut. Your lucky day, Fat Tony, she spat. Let's go, Bumpy said. They walked back toward the Lincoln, leaving Tony and his men standing, in the rain, humiliated, disarmed, and poor. Junie lowered the machine gun and climbed down the ladder, joining them at the car. As they drove away, heading back toward the safety of 110th Street, the atmosphere in the car was heavy. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the complex reality of what had just happened. Lucia sat in the back with the satchel of money on her lap. She was counting it. 60,000, she said, plus the 30 he gave me up front. $90,000, not a bad night's work. You earned it, Bumpy said, watching the city pass by. You played your part. So, Lucia said, shifting her body to face him. What now, Bumpy? We're partners? I'm your new enforcer? She reached out, her hand resting on his knee. I could be useful to you, Ellsworth, in more ways than one. A man like you. You need excitement. You need someone who understands the darkness. Your wife. She's a civilian. She doesn't know what it feels like to hold a life in your hand. Bumpy didn't move his leg. He didn't smile. He looked at her hand, then he looked at her face. His expression was one of mild pity. You mistake me, Lucia, Bumpy said. I don't love the darkness. I live in it so my family can live in the light. Mamie isn't a civilian. She's the reason I do this. She's the anchor. You're just the storm. He gently removed her hand from his knee. You're not my partner, Bumpy said clearly. You're a contractor. We have a business arrangement. You keep your ears open in Little Italy. If you hear my name whispered, you tell me. And for every useful tip, you get paid. But don't ever think you can replace what I have at home. And don't ever think you can play me. Lucia pulled back, stung. The rejection hit her harder than a slap. She was used to men falling for the danger she represented. But Bumpy was immune. He had seen too much real danger to be seduced by the performance of it. Fine, she said, her voice icy. Strictly business. Strictly business, Bumpy agreed. The car crossed 110th Street. The air changed. They were in Harlem now. The tension in Junie's shoulders relaxed. This was their kingdom. Bumpy had the car stop at a corner near a subway station. This is your stop, Bumpy said. Lucia looked surprised. You're dumping me on a corner. You have $90,000 in that bag, Bumpy said. You can afford a taxi or a limousine. Take a vacation, Lucia. Go to Paris. Eat the bread. Let the heat die down before you show your face in the city again. Lucia hesitated. She looked at Bumpy one last time. There was a grudging respect in her eyes, mixed with a lingering curiosity. She had met the king, and she hadn't been able to dethrone him. You're a strange man, Bumpy Johnson, she said, opening the door. You could have had everything tonight. I already have everything, Bumpy said. Lucia stepped out into the rain. She clutched the bag to her chest. She watched as the black Lincoln pulled away, disappearing into the Harlem night. Inside the car, Bumpy lit a fresh cigarette. He took a deep drag, letting the smoke fill his lungs. He felt the weight of the night lifting. Junie, Bumpy said. Yeah, boss? That woman, Bumpy said, watching the smoke swirl. Lucia. Yeah. She's a loose cannon, Bumpy said quietly. She likes the blood too much. She has no code. A person with no code is like a gun with no safety. Eventually it goes off in your pocket. You want me to handle it? Junie asked, his eyes checking the mirror. No, Bumpy said. Not yet. She's useful against the Italians. She scares them. But she's not to be trusted. Never turn your back on her. Never let her near Mamie. And Junie? Yeah, Bumpy. Keep a close eye on her, Bumpy said, his voice hardening into finality. If she ever looks at us the way she looked at Tony tonight, if she ever gets that hunger in her eyes again. Bumpy didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Junie nodded. Understood, boss. I'll keep the shovel ready. Bumpy leaned back, closing his eyes. The rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers was the only sound. He thought about Mamie waiting at home. He thought about the warm dinner that would be on the table. He thought about the razor against his throat and how close death always was, hovering just an inch away. He touched his neck. It was smooth. It was the best shave he'd had in years. Solid, Bumpy whispered to the darkness. The Lincoln turned the corner onto the avenue, rolling smooth and slow, carrying the king back to his castle, while the rain washed the sins of the city into the gutters, waiting for the next storm.
Thanks for listening, folks. If you liked that video and want more, be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any Bumpy Johnson stories.